Okay, so we start off with just a normal annuity kind of situation where we have payments occurring every time period. And when I have this discussion, I'm probably just going to refer to it as months, but you can sub in whichever time period is applicable to you. And with the normal annuity that we're talking about, it's ordinary annuity, so it happens at the end of every time period. So we start off with a PV equal to some value. It shouldn't be a question mark, it's an actual value that's going to go in there. And that's at T0. And then at T1, the payments start being made. And then at T0, and it continues on to Tn minus 1 and Tn. So again, just your standard ordinary annuity. Now we're going to have a situation where a period of time in this annuity, payments aren't going to be made. So we're going to just look at, a clump of missed payments. So let's say the 3 over here aren't made, and let's call them 15, 16, and 17. And when they're not being made, we have 0 payments occurring at that time period. Now, when you follow the approach of considering those missed payments and paying off the result of them, in the very next time period that you start making payments, so let's say at T18, you start remaking those monthly payments, then you can consider this missed payments as like a secondary loan, where you're taking out a loan to pay off the annuity so that the original annuity still goes on as normal, but you owe the bank on, the fact that there's like the secondary loan occurring. So you would have some loan where you have at T15, you get the payment amount to satisfy the original annuity. See it like that. So a secondary loan running like parallel to it, which incorporates those monthly payments that you should have paid, but you didn't. And now when you're considering this and you want to make a payment to pay this off at T18, you have to consider that it must look like an ordinary annuity. And when you have an ordinary annuity, you need 1 month before its information. But this is seen as a secondary loan that you're taking out. So the PV here is equal to 0. So again, in this situation, we're making a lump sum payment the month we restart our payments. You can see those missed payments as almost like a secondary loan you're taking out, where every month that you make a missed payment, you're taking out a loan of that payment amount. So you have this secondary loan structure that goes and runs parallel to your annuity, where your FV is obviously going to equal to something, and you pay that off at T18. That means that your original annuity runs as normal because the secondary loan is taking in those missed payments. So it runs as normal. So you won't make any changes to the monthly payments or the duration or anything. No changes. And all the missed payments is incorporated into the secondary loan that's occurring here. Okay. Where you have to consider, because it is an annuity style loan, you need the month before it, which is that T14. And because you're paying it at T18, you need the T18 to get your future value. Now, that's just something that you need to consider. Let's just discuss this quick before we go to an example. If you just look at the secondary loan, forget everything else for a second. If you look at this, it's actually 2 pieces. It is your normal annuity, which sits, there like this. Let's just quickly write it in, up to T17, where you have your PV is equal to 0, and then you have your PMT, and PMT, and you can solve your future value. Then it's a different kind of calculation where you just have interest occurring from T17 to T18. So that's another thing you need to consider. So you see in those missed payments as a secondary loan, you rewrite the structure to incorporate, you want the future value at T18 because that's what you want to pay off. You need T14 because ordinary annuities require the month before. Then you look at it carefully and you have to break it up into pieces of information. So up until T17, you have an annuity occurring. And then from T17 to T18, it's just your standard interest-bearing loan with no payments occurring. So those are going to be two separate calculations. So let's look at an example. A loan of 8,000 Rand was secured at an interest rate of 10% per annum compounded monthly. The loan is said to be repaid in 20 equal monthly payments of 443 Rand and 32 cents. Assuming the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th payments were missed, and assume the missed payments will be repaid at the same time payments are restarted, what is that lump sum repayment? So the first thing we're going to do is going to draw that timeline so you can visualize what's happening. So we're going to have our standard annuity that is discussed here in green. So we have T0 where we start off with, and it's a loan of PV equals 8,000, and it's an inflow of money. So it is a positive. Then we have a T1, monthly payments are started. So that's a PMT, and it is an outflow of money. And that's minus 443.62. Then T2 would be the same thing. Okay, so let's just copy and paste and move that. And now we are going to continue. And it's going to continue happening. And I'm just drawing a line in there now because we're going to need it soon. And then it's going to be at T19 and at T20. And once again, those payments are going to happen. Let's just touch that up. That's PMT and outflow. Right, so we have this structure as well as our future value over here is going to be equal to 0. Now we have that we are going to miss the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th payment. So let's just put that in there. T10, T11, T12, and T13 are going to be 0, 0, 0, 0. So we're going to want to pay it off as a lump sum payment on the month we restart payments. So we know we only miss T10 to T13, so we restart payments on T14. So we have, that situation where that is still going to happen. Now we look at it and we go, okay, so we're taking our loan with T10, T11, T12, and T13's payments. So let's draw that. So T10, T11, T12, and T13. And it's a loan where we get an inflow of that PMT amount. So we have plus PMT because it's an inflow of money to us. Now I'm just going to move my screen so I have more space to write. Okay. So we have a loan occurring where we get a value of PMT at T10, T11, T12, and T13. We know that when we do something like this, it is an annuity, and we're going to work with it like it's an ordinary annuity, which means we need 1 month's before information. So we need a T9. What is the secondary loan's present value at T9? Well, so far we sorting everything else. This is secondary loans. We don't owe anything on the secondary loan yet. So we have PV is equal to 0. So now we have an annuity for T9 to T13 where there's a future value we need to find. And then we are going to need to take that annuity and the future value of that annuity and add 1 month's interest onto it. So from T13 to T14, we need to figure out how much are we going to owe then at T14 so that we can make that lump sum payment. So again, we have T10 to T13. We don't make any payments in our original annuity. To fix that, we see it as we taking out a secondary loan of those payments amounts. That was that T10 to the T13. We know an ordinary annuity looks like the fact that we need 1 month before we start getting payments or stuff. So we have the T9 occurring there. Then we can work out at the end of T13 how much we owe from that annuity structure. And then we have to take that future value because the annuity structure ended, and we have to just look at a structure where we just earn interest on that amount owed. And that's at T13 to the T14 because we're going to pay it off at T14. So we're going to find the future value over there. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to have to find the future value in the yellow and then put it into part 2, where we're going to use from T13 to T14 to find that future value. And that's what we're going to pay off as a lump sum for those missed payment amounts. So let's just write down all the information we know for the first part, which is the annuity, the secondary annuity. So part 1. So for part 1, I'm going to use the left-hand side of my screen and just fill in information. So we have a present value of 0. We have the payment amounts, and they're going to be an inflow of money, so they're positive. And so that's 443.32. And then we have our interest, which is, in case you've forgotten, 10% per annum compounded monthly. Would be useful if I just scrolled up again. There we go. So we have our IY as 10, and it's compounded monthly, so CY is 12. Our payments are occurring monthly, so PY is equal to 12 as well. And then our N in this case is 13 minus the 9. So remember, it's that amount minus that amount. And from here, we can solve for our future value using the standard approaches for annuities. If you're stuck on that, I suggest you go back to the ordinary annuity video and just recap the process. But we're going to get an answer of the future value is equal to 1795.57. But when we do this on our calculator, it is going to come up as a negative value, and we're going to need to just consider that when we store it, because remember, we're going to need to store it for part 2. So you're always going to store your values, and if you do it on your financial calculator, it's store on whatever variable. I usually choose A, which is usually by the amortization button. So you're going to have to remember that when you do it in part 2. So once again, if you solve this on your financial calculator, it's going to be negative, and you need to consider that when you use it for part 2. Okay, next up we do part 2. And for part 2, what I want to do is I'm just going to write down the values again for this part. So for this part, we have a present value, which is the future value from this yellow part there. So that's the present value. So the present value is 1795.57. But once again, you're going to recall that value and use it. You're not just going to type it in. Okay. Also, you're going to have to consider when you recall it, how you stored it. So if you stored it as a negative value and you're going to use it as a present value here, and it's money you have, it needs to be positive. So then you use a plus minus recall AMRT. Okay, the other information is the IY, which is still 10. It has not changed. The CY and the PY is still equal to 12. That has not changed. There can be questions and scenarios where that changes as well. Our end year is just 1 because we just go from 14 to 13. So 14 minus 13 is 1. And we don't have any monthly payments happening at the moment. So remember, it's just interest bearing. You're not paying anything off. So then you can solve it like a normal, compound interest equation. And once again, I suggest if you're having trouble with that, to go back to the video that houses the how-tos for it. And now we're going to get the future value is equal to 1810.53. And once again, it's going to come up on your calculator as negative if you followed the whole inflow and outflow process with loans. But you know that means you need to pay that off. So the lump sum payment is this amount here, the 1810.53.